Hey there, Mary Sheila here, and welcome to my kitchen. And today I wanted to make my summer longevity soup, which was inspired last summer from the Blue Zone series, where if you watch that, it just was a lot of things that people that have longevity do. And one of them was soup, like minestrone soup. And I thought, oh, I can make that, especially in the summer when I have all this beautiful produce. And I also made some white beans, some cannelloni beans, which are a nice bean that our family likes. So I cooked those the other day. And I'm doing a little twist today where I'm also going to use some sausage from our local butcher downtown in Occidental, Panizera. So I'm going to make this soup, and I'm going to show you how I make my longevity soup. It's really delicious. You don't have to do it with the sausage, obviously, if you don't eat meat, but this will add a really nice flavor. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually remove the sausage from its casing. And I'm going to cook the sausage first. So I'm just going to remove the casing, and then I can even just kind of flatten it out a little bit, break it apart a little bit before I put it in the pan. Because the sausage is kind of fatty, I don't even need to add any oil. Just gonna pop it in my pan, let it cook down a little bit, and it'll add a nice layer of flavor in my pan. And then I'm gonna add some of my vegetables and herbs. So I'm gonna get to that right after I wash my hands. All right, so I'm gonna just cut up some stuff for the first layer of my flavors, and that's my onion. And I'm gonna keep the root side down because I think that'll help a little bit with my tears if I happen to have anything. And onion is in the allium family, and it's got lots of quercetins. It's great if you have allergies. It's got lots of sulfur. So it's all around just a really potent, healthy vegetable. Great for the microbiome. I know some people can't always eat onions if they've got what I would call dysbiosis. Basically, sometimes it gives people a little bit too much gas. All right, so sometimes I like to just pull everything to here, and then I'm just gonna come through and I'm gonna cut some rounds. I don't need these to be tiny, but I'm not gonna also cut them too big. But basically I'm just gonna come in here and cut them one way and then flip them around and cut them another way. So they're nice and small. But I can rough cut them. They're gonna be a soup. I don't need to cut them too little. All right. And I'm just gonna continue to break up the sausage a little bit. And it was just one sausage, so it's really just gonna flavor the soup a little bit, flavor my pan. All right, so I got my onion. Now I'm gonna go for a little bit of garlic. All right. And the garlic always adds such a nice flavor. And this is actually a really quick soup too, which is really nice. It will just cook up really quick. And so it's an easy weeknight food. And then one of the things that I love to do, like the next day, if I'm going off to work, the other night we went to see music and it was kind of chilly. And we were picnicking with friends at the river before we saw the music. And I just warmed up my longevity soup and put it in a thermos cup. And then the other day, I've been making this a few times because it's been a little chilly here this summer. I had another friend who came to visit me at work at lunch. So I said, I'll bring soup. And so I fed us soup. And I warmed these up, which is nice. All right. So I'm going to use the end of my spatula just to break up my sausage a little bit. And if I didn't have a good spatula to do this, once it's all cooked, I am going to take it out. So I could always dice it up a little bit more with my knife, which I still might end up doing. So I picked a little bit of sage from the garden, which is nice. And I also picked some thyme and some basil. So what I thought I would do once the meat was cooked is throw in the onions for a little minute, and then I was going to throw in all the herbs and the garlic let that again create a nice layer of flavor. That's your tip of the day when you're cooking with me. You want to layer the flavors, right? You want to remember that every time you add a layer, how is that going to flavor your meal, right? And that can make something more complex. Rather than adding all the flavor at the very beginning, you might lose some of it, or at the end, it might be too much, right? So you kind of layer it in there. Like I've got a little parsley for the very end. And I really want this to get a little bit more brown, so I'm gonna let it go a little longer, and I'm gonna cut my herbs. So I've got some really nice basil this summer. I'm just gonna get some of the stem off, but I didn't cut a lot of stem off. I mean, I didn't bring in a lot of stem. So I'm just gonna bring all my little herbs together, and I'm just gonna come in here and I'm just going to cut them up. And actually, you know what else is another way to layer the flavor? Is I'm gonna move my garlic right on over the onion, and I'm just going to chop them together. And actually, I can also, just to really bring out the flavor, I could just lay down a little salt on there, and I'll start to break it down. Now we're talking. Because salt has the action of liquefying things, right? And breaking it down. We use salt to marinate, to soften. You know, if you've ever made sauerkraut or pickles or eaten them, they're usually made with salt and water. And water and salt softens and cures. So just add a little in there. Perfect. And then, let's check the sausage. And it's starting to look a little bit brown. So, you know, it's been a few minutes, but it's perfect so I can get other stuff done. And actually, I was gonna pull it out, but it's not as brown as I'd like, so I'm just gonna throw the onions on top of them and let them keep cooking. Sometimes if they cook nicely, I'll pull them out and then put them back in later, but I think they can handle the longer cook tonight. And notice I haven't even put any olive oil in there yet, because I'm just letting those onions soak up the flavor of the fat from the sausage. And then I also have these beautiful purple and green beans from the garden. So I'm just gonna pop off some of the stems, the ones that just have a little bit of stem on them. But aren't those beautiful, nice purple? So you see I'm getting lots of color in here, green and white and purple. So that's really showing us that there's a lot of antioxidants in this meal, right? Color is really showing itself. Color is protective to the plant, and then therefore it becomes protective to us, actually. So all those antioxidants, all those colors, they sort of, one place they really support the body is the endothelial layer. So if you think about your blood, right, pulsing through your arteries and your veins, the lining of your vessels and veins and arteries is called the endothelial layer. And it's like very, you know, we want to make sure that endothelial layer is strong and healthy. And the colors in food lend themselves to giving us a lot of the polyphenols and antioxidants that protect it, just like the colors protect the plants as well, right? So it's a nice symbiotic relationship out there. So I'm just cutting my green beans, give them a little bit more like bite size, right? Okay. My onions are starting to get translucent. They're starting to smell good. I'm gonna add just a little pinch of salt. And then in a minute, I'm gonna add some olive oil and such. But I wanted to show you, because this was a zucchini that kind of got away. Now, what I'm gonna do with this zucchini that got away is I am going to cut it, but I'm gonna check it first, and I'm gonna show you something. So I'm just cutting the big end in half, and if you can see, this one isn't too bad, but there's kind of a soft area in the middle where the seeds are starting to form. It's not the most edible. It's like where it gets a little mushy, where sometimes people might not like zucchini. So I'm gonna cut it in a way that I can kind of just access that middle, right? Boom. Now I've taken out the seedy part, and that's also the part that might have lectins and anti-nutrients that you might hear about from like Dr. Gundry. He's always talking about them. So instead of feeling like you can't eat them, you just remove that part of the plant, and then you can enjoy them still, because they really are good for us. And I don't think we should be all afraid of eating vegetables. because, I mean, there's a time and place where maybe people avoid certain vegetables, but for the most part, it's just about how do we properly prepare our vegetables, right? All right, so I'm just gonna do the same thing with all these slices. At least the end that usually holds more of the seeds, right? Boom, getting rid of the kind of soft part, and then I have more of the firm part that's just gonna kind of taste better. It's gonna have a better texture in your mouth when you're eating it. And that is what you want. All right. And I don't need to do that with this part of the zucchini because this is not where the seeds are. Actually, I have half a carrot. I'm just gonna add half a carrot in here. I'm gonna throw those guys in here now. And then what I'm gonna do, now that my onion is pretty translucent, my sausage has browned, I'm just gonna add some olive oil. Okay, add a little olive oil. And I'm going to add my herbs. I'm getting into more of the layers of flavors, and my garlic. And I'm gonna let them kind of be coated with the olive oil. Turn my heat down just a little bit. I don't wanna burn the garlic. So notice I didn't put the garlic in at the beginning because that probably would have burned it. And burnt garlic is not very fun. And yet, last year we had a bumper crop of tomatoes. This year we just have a few so far. They're just coming in kind of slow. So I'm going to use one of the sauces that we made last year. I could smell the herbs. You smell. So if you love rosemary, if you love oregano, I just use thyme and sage and basil, because that sounded good to me. So, you know, use what you have. And if you have different vegetables, like maybe you have some fennel or shallots, maybe you have, I don't know, bok choy. I also have some kale here. Okay, so I really only want to do my garlic for just a couple minutes because I don't want it to burn. So I'm going to add my sauce. Oh yeah. Now this is getting all happy. And then if you had like white wine or red wine, this would be a good time to add it. It just would add like a richness to your dish. So I'm gonna add a little. I just happen to have a little sitting out that I've been using for cooking lately. So maybe like a quarter cup or so I put in there, and I can turn the heat up just a little bit, really get it kind of cooking. And then literally I'm gonna add my zucchini, my green beans, I'm gonna add a little kale too, and then my soup is gonna be ready, and I'm gonna use water. If I had broth, I would use broth, but it's okay if you don't have broth. Like, you can just use water, right? So with my kale, I like to just go whoop, and that makes it really easy. And then I usually just take my kale leaves and layer them together, and then even sometimes I'll, like these are really long, I could even fold them in half. Just try to make my cutting time quicker and just come right across and cut them. And I'll probably cut them again. Again, I'm thinking about making sure that my, I don't get these long strings that are hard to get into my mouth, right? Usually when you put wine in, you smell it, and when you stop smelling it, you've burned off the alcohol, so that's a good thing. And you also don't have to use wine. Sometimes if you want to add a little sweetness to your soup, I'll show you something else that you can add that's really nice, and that is just a little splash of balsamic vinegar, and that's going to kind of add like a richness to your soup. So just add a little bit. Again, you're going to want that to burn off. Sometimes when we make sauces, tomato sauces, we'll add, sometimes we'll add a little honey. Sometimes my husband will grate carrots in there, and that will kind of help it to sort of flavor. These happen to be very sweet tomatoes because they're homegrown. You know how the homegrown tomatoes are like a whole nother level than just regular tomatoes. Okay, so I'm gonna add my zucchini. So you see how quick and easy this is, and so healthy. And again, one thing I love about soup is that you can just eat it other times and it's right there for you. Like I love soup for breakfast. I love, you know, taking soup in my thermos like I showed you. And one little trick when you do the thermos is you want to heat your thermos up first with boiling water. So you want to get your kettle going, pour the boiling water while you're rewarming your soup up, and then right before you pour it in, you want to dump this so that this is nice and hot. And that's going to give you a hot soup, whether it's like 4 hours later or 6 hours later, because sometimes if you don't do that, it's like lukewarm and it's not that fun. And my friend was telling me she got one for her little boy who's 4 for his preschool, and he was like, Mom, it wasn't hot. So I gave her the mom tip because, you know, my daughter's bigger. Okay, now I'm going to add my beans. Yay. And these are already cooked, but they're just going to get all happy and flavorful. And then last but not least, I will add my water, right? Because this is very thick. And what I'm going to do, and I didn't do already, but I'm just going to heat up my kettle first so that I'm pouring boiling water in instead of having this nice hot soup, everything's cooking, and then I dump a bunch of cold water, just like I dumped the cold beans in. But still, I could have even warmed up my beans and a little bit of water, but it'll all work. So I will put the kale in towards the end, and I also have some parsley that I will put in at the end as well, just to like top everybody's plate. And then I also want to, it's really nice sometimes to grate a little bit of cheese on at the end. And what I found when you're making something like this, the best way to grate it is just as fine as can be. So these little zesters work really well. And so you could just do it right on a plate and you get a really fine zest. And that just kind of makes the cheese totally melt into the bowl and makes the soup kind of have a nice creaminess, and it already kind of does with the white cannelloni beans. And just if you're wondering, the cannelloni beans I soaked overnight and then I cooked them in my Instapot for like 7 minutes. So it was also a really easy task. So, you know, all in all, this, you can see this didn't take me very long. Let's see, so it's a nice, very fine, feathery, you know, very light grate, and that just, again, melts right into the bowl. So I've got my water heated up in the kettle, and I'm just gonna pour a little bit of that warm water into my soup so that I'm not, you know, just cooling it down too much. And again, I can add as much water as I really want at this point, based on, you know, how much I'm making. Like I am thinking about lunch tomorrow. So maybe I'll make a little more. I'm gonna feed 3 people tonight and I know I'll have leftovers. And now that it's warmed up, I'll probably be the only one that eats the leftovers, if I'm gonna be honest. It's a little tougher of a sell for soup in the summer when it's a nice sunny day. We've had a lot of coolness. But I live in the Redwoods, and the Redwoods are calling it in this year, and they're getting their nice, cool, foggy summer. That's so good for them, so I'm kind of happy about that. I mean, I'm trying to see the silver lining of a cold, foggy summer. Okay, so there we go. And now the last thing I'll do is I'm just gonna prep my my parsley, and I'm gonna throw my kale in there. And, you know, probably let it simmer for about 15 minutes and then I'm done. And I will just chop up my parsley and top each bowl with a little parsley, a little cheese. I will probably taste my soup in a few minutes once it gets all happy, and possibly add more salt, or just put salt on the table and pepper and let people salt and pepper and flavor their own soup to their liking. And that's a great way to make it a crowd pleaser. You just want to always make sure you do put the salt and pepper out. If you're feeding other people, you don't want them to feel bad about asking for the salt. Okay, well, they shouldn't feel bad about asking for the salt, but a lot of people think salt is not good for us, but it is an essential nutrient as long as we're not getting too much of it, and it's usually found in processed foods. So as long as you're avoiding processed foods and you're salting your own food to taste, you're usually going to be just fine, because it is an essential nutrient. We just get too much in processed foods. Salt your own food use a whole salt and you're gonna be just fine. Thank you for watching. I wish you could join me for this soup, and I'll see you. And this is not the best soup spoon, but it helped with the sausage at the beginning. And you know, sometimes you don't want to do too many dishes. All right, you guys have a good one. I hope you can make longevity soup. I will post the recipe below, and I'll see you next time. And if you're new to my channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.